So today's news is that the government is going to bring back the legislation before MPs that will enshrine in UK law the divorce deal agreed between the UK government and the EU. My question to all of you is, will it get through, Nadine?
Well, gosh, that's a big question. So this morning I've heard MPs who voted for it last time who are not going to vote for it next time. And so I think the short answer to your question is probably not, no. Because there are so many scenarios that will come forward with this new WAB as it is.
The Withdrawal Agreement Bill.
Yeah,
Yes.
Personally, I think it's, you know, there are so many arguments for and against it passing. If it passes, it will come forward. I think it should pass at a second reading, possibly. And then no deal is back on the table. So those people arguing for no deal will find it back on the table if the WAB passes at second reading. But there are people who are saying, actually, no, it shouldn't. It shouldn't pass at all. And then Parliament, further down the road, probably in October, could be faced with a binary vote of revoke Article 50 or no deal.
What would you do?
And Parliament is not... I don't even want to think about that, Joe, because I hope something else can happen in the meantime. But there is one overriding concern in all of this. MPs in Parliament now, Conservative MPs, are not so much talking about bringing the bill back. They're talking about how do we change leader and get Theresa May out of number 10 as soon as possible. All right. And whatever achieves that end goal is going to persuade people as to which way they cast their vote.
So that's your priority. Do you think it'll get through, Adam?
Well, it certainly won't get through with our support unless it has a clear commitment to taking it back to to the people. I've watched this sort of this saga. I'm not up on the jargon. I didn't WAB. That's a new one.
Yeah, but, WAB. That's catchy, isn't it?
More twists and turns and casualties than Game of Thrones, really. But the clear thing is, look, we're stuck. Politics is stuck. The only way that we can actually resolve this, I think, so that we can get on and talk about other things like child poverty rising in Wales at the moment. Let's take it back to the people so that we can get this finally resolved one way or the other.
It's very clear to anybody watching from the outside, and it's even worse from the inside, that Westminster's broken. I mean, Westminster is not working. The likelihood of the government being able to get anything through at this moment in time seems very slim, particularly something like the Withdrawal Agreement Bill. We are really, this is kind of this Prime Minister attempting to subvert democracy and bringing this bill forward when she hasn't had the meaningful vote. She hasn't had agreement on our deal. It's been defeated 3 times. We will absolutely not be supporting this, just as we voted down her deal 3 times, and just as we voted against Article 50. But you don't.
Suzanne, will it get through or won't it?
No, it absolutely won't get through. And I think the opinion around this table, nobody is in support of the withdrawal agreement. Nothing has changed from that perspective whatsoever. Parliament is still not behind it. Brexiteers are not behind it because it's not Brexit.
Why is Theresa May bringing it to Parliament?
I think she's just run out of all other options. This is her last throw of the dice, not just for her plan, but frankly for her premiership. She just has no other avenues to go down. I don't think anyone believes having indicative votes, or as they're now called, definitive votes, is going to resolve anything. So she might as well have one last bash about it. And I kind of think psychologically for her, the point about doing it this way is it gets around the nightmare of Mrs May literally being turfed out, either by the 1922 forcing another contest, or by the party grassroots at the National Conservative Convention passing a motion of no confidence. And to avoid literally being dragged out of number 10 this way, if she loses, and I think she will, then my expectation is she will quit in the immediate aftermath. And at least then she can say, well, look, I did everything I could. I tried to get Brussels to rewrite the deal. I tried to pass this in bits and pieces, just doing the withdrawal part of it. I tried to do a deal with the Labour Party. I've done everything I could, but I accept it's not going to be possible. So in a limited sort of way, she can at least go on her own terms, as I say, without being dragged out kicking and screaming.
Well, on that, is there any suggestion then, any real suggestion that progress has been made in the talks with Labour that could provide any hope for it passing?
Well, I keep swearing till I'm blue in the face that this is a dead parrot, only to be told by Downing Street that I've got this completely wrong. So if you listen to the key players in Labour, Mr Corbyn, Mr McDonnell, Emily Thornberry, Keir Starmer, I mean, they're pretty upfront about it. They say no significant progress has been made in the past 6 weeks, and much more to their alarm, if the suggestion from, well, we heard it from those former cabinet ministers yesterday, that once a new leader gets in, brackets maybe Boris Johnson, they can just rip up any deal. So the idea Labour would sign up to anything seems to me, you know, almost, well, I just don't believe it's going to happen. The only way it might work is if Mr Corbyn, in the wake of a battering in the European elections, decided to turn a blind eye to those Labour Leave MPs who really want a deal and just give them the space to back the government. But even then, you've got so many sort of Tory diehards. I think you might get, you know, if you're lucky, 10, 12, maybe a few more Labour leavers. But no way is it going to outweigh the solid block of diehard Tory opponents to Mrs May's plan.
All right, Norman Smith, thank you very much.
So you know what a key day, there's going to be 2 key days going forward. 23rd of May, Bank Holiday Monday, is when borough by borough the European election results come through. And MPs will be computing those results onto their own constituencies and watching their majorities of 8, 9, 10, 11,000 potentially being wiped out in a shortly to happen general election.
All right.
That's the time, following that Bank Holiday Monday, you are going to see a change, both in attitude from Conservative MPs and what happens in Westminster. I think the game playing at that point will stop.
Let's have a look at the withdrawal agreement bill, because, Kirsty, Nicola Sturgeon has promised a second independence referendum if Brexit happens. So why not vote for a Brexit deal and help secure that second independence ref?
I mean, you know, we stood in a manifesto in 2016 that said that we would bring forward an independence referendum. An independence referendum will come forward. We will have an independence referendum. But the reality is, we don't want to be dragged out of the EU. We don't want the UK to be dragged out of the EU. We have done every single opportunity what we can to protect the jobs, the livelihoods, and the rights and living standards of our constituents and of those across the UK. If you look at our record, everything that we have done has been in order to try and stop Brexit. And actually, what Nadine's comments about the Labour Party there, the reality is the Labour Party stood in a manifesto saying that they would want to deliver Brexit.
But for you and your supporters, they want a second independence referendum, and that can only really be guaranteed by the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon if there is an exit. As you have just said, you don't want to see Britain being dragged out of the EU. But if they were, you and your supporters get that second independence referendum, and that is the holy grail for you.
Do you know what? The reality is that we're going to have a second referendum at some point in the future anyway.
At some point,
I've always said
2 years, 5 years, 10 years, but you'd have it now.
I've always said that my children will grow up in an independent Scotland, and I wouldn't be fighting every day for that. The reality is that people will be better off in an independent Scotland. We will not have a Westminster government that is not working for Scotland and not listening to Scotland. It's done everything it can to ignore the people of Scotland, the Parliament of Scotland, and Wales as well.
That's the difference, though, in Wales. Of course, you are a Remain party and fighting that platform in the EU elections in a country that voted Leave.
Well, look, I mean, I have a very simple policy here. Like, you know, I have to be honest. And I have to say to the people of Wales, you know, what I actually believe, that ripping us out of the EU will rip the heart out of our economy. You know, my party was founded, after all, to defend Wales. And if that's what I honestly believe, you know, whether it's politically convenient or inconvenient or anything else, I have to say to the people of Wales, look, you know, this will be bad for us. And we have to take the opportunity to take it back to the people in order, I hope, to keep Wales and the rest of the UK in the EU.
But you're not the party of Wales, then, are you, in that sense? Because Wales voted to leave. They voted to do something that you are firmly against.
Look, there's a very easy answer to that. In 1979,
well, the
people of Wales voted 8-1 against devolution. Did Plaid Cymru the week after say, "Oh, we'll give up on our dream of having Wales self-governing"? No, we got back out there and tried to persuade people. You know that we're in the persuasion business in politics, and it's up to me and everyone else on the panel to make our case, and that's what we're doing. We think Wales's future is in Europe, and that's what we have to say to people at this election. And if you really passionately agree with us, then, you know, even if you're a Labour supporter that's completely disaffected at the moment, Liberal, Green, etc., please lend your votes to us in Wales, because we're the only Remain party that can win seats at this election.
Right. Nigel Farage is visiting Wales today, Merthyr Tydfil, I think, amid mounting speculation that he'll be announcing a Brexit Party group in the Welsh Assembly. Are you going to be voting for the Brexit Party, Suzanne?
Yes, I am, absolutely. I mean, there is no other party on the ballot paper that reflects my views other than the Brexit party. You know, as Nadine has just said, we should not be having these elections. We should have been out of the European Union by now. They shouldn't be on the table at all. But Adam, you want a second referendum. I think you're going to get one, or at least some sort of semblance of one in the European elections, because the Brexit party is going to win, and it's going to win big. And that is the second referendum.
Adam, listening to this in terms of the Brexit party, how do you feel? They're coming to Wales this evening. There have been rallies supporting Nigel Farage. How do you combat that, counter it?
Well, look, I think it is true that, you know, Brexit has unleashed this wave of what I regard as a sort of reactionary, backward-looking British nationalism. And as we see in Scotland...
Well, that's just, I'm sorry, that's your prejudice talking, Adam.
Well,
it's quite the opposite.
What I would say to people, look at Scotland. The only way to combat that fairly nightmarish vision of the future of politics in these islands is the kind of civic progressive nationalism that the SNP and Plaid Cymru represent. That's the choice. And I think that's why we saw the biggest independence rally in the history of our nation in Wales at the weekend. The Western Mail editorial yesterday saying that independence has now come in from the margins of Welsh politics to the mainstream. And you know why? Because people are looking at that nightmarish vision of, I don't know, even Prime Minister Farage, and people are thinking, you know, there's a better future.
Kirsty.
I think the point about civic nationalism is really important. The SNP and Plaid Cymru have supported at every opportunity the best things for our citizens. And what we think is the best thing is to remain in the EU and to keep freedom of movement. It's incredibly important that we continue to welcome people to Scotland, that we continue to have an immigration policy.
But you have to be in the EU to do that. You can welcome people to Scotland without being in the European Union.
The problem is that we've got a Conservative government that have put forward an immigration white paper that destroys much of the Scottish economy, and they're totally unwilling to take on board any suggestions for a differential immigration policy, for a devolved immigration policy. Now, the reality is we need people to come and work in our care sector. We need people to come and be nurses. Nurses don't earn 30 grand a year when they're first in the job. We need all of those people to come, and the Conservative Westminster government is refusing to